How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today's video on World of Tanks console looks at the Foch 155, the tier 10 tank destroyer from the French line. So this is an absolutely fantastic tank destroyer that is definitely underrated on console. Now, a lot of players, they say that this thing is just a bit lackluster. The armour doesn't really work, the side armour is pretty paper, and so they often say, it's one of those that kind of, yes, it can do well, but it can't do well all of the time. Whereas I'm going to say that this tank is actually really, really competitive in this game right now. With the accuracy buffs that it gets means that, you can pump out the 6-shot autoloader that this thing gets really, really quickly and in real quick succession. So it's super good in game, definitely a tank that I would 100% recommend for those of you to try out. And if you want to use the 155mm that this gets, it gets a 3-shot autoloader with 850 alpha damage. Yes, that's right, 850, meaning that you can do like 2,000 damage in total in one clip with the 15cm. Now with this clip you can actually do even more damage than that, and so this thing really is one of those that people underwhelm or are underwhelmed by, I guess, until they realise just how good this tank can be. As you can see, we put a couple shots into the M60 and we've still got 2 left in the clip. 400 alpha damage per shot, 6 rounds, 2,400 total alpha damage that you can pump out with this thing within a very, very small amount of time. So you've got about 6 to 8 seconds until you've fully unloaded the clip, which means you can shut down people really, really easily if you track them, hit them with the second shot, then they retrack basically, and then you've ploughed multiple rounds into them, and often every single tank in the game can pretty much get clipped by you from full health. Now what you see there is actually reloaded the autoloader, and that is something that you'll have to realise in some tanks like this, like the Foch, is that sometimes you do have to reload your autoloader even if you do have a couple shots in the clip. Now you'll see that we've actually reloaded half of the amount of time in total, which means I could have got a shot on the Emil, but it was very unlikely that, we would have hit him, we would have penned him, and so it's very important that you do reload when you're not actually expecting to get any more damage within the game. Now, 6 shots in the clip again, so this means, if anyone comes out that's in a bad position, like this Rheinmetall or the M48 Rampanzer, well, you can see just how fun it is for him. We tracked him with the first shot, we then just continually pumped him with multiple rounds, one after the other, and this is exactly why the Foch 155 tank destroyer is so fun to play. It's one of those you can just jump into, have some really good games, and this one definitely doesn't disappoint. And now we've picked up 2,000 damage nearly within the first couple of minutes, 3 minutes of the game. Not particularly the best damage you'll ever pick up at the beginning of the game, but there are a lot of, heavy tanks on full health basically. So you can see this T57 Heavy is pushing up, he's on a lot of health, obviously an autoloader himself, along with this Super Conqueror who we've ploughed 2 rounds into, which is really, really good. Now, as far as doing some extra damage, you want to make sure you basically put in the damage as and when you can. So as much as possible, just basically putting in as round after round into anyone that you can see. And so, we dealt a decent, consistent amount of damage there throughout that kind of clips that we did have. So we're up to 3,400 alpha damage, which is really, really good for this kind of stage in the game. But it is time to move, because one thing about this tank, doesn't really have armour. It kind of does if people hit the kind of main body of the front of the tank, but if they hit those bits on the top, these kind of cupolas there, basically nullifies the armour of the tank, and basically anyone that you can meet, even tier 8s, can actually pen those. So it's really important that you actually try and hide them around a corner, wiggle your tank sideways, just to try and avoid getting hit, and also putting your gun up in the air and kind of putting that in the way of the enemy tanks as well. Now in terms of this game, we haven't had a particularly great game, in terms of the team deployment and how many tanks are left alive. We've got a Conqueror up there on basically one shot. It's 6 versus 8, which it's not very good for us, is it? Let's be honest. Now, whether or not we can make an impact to the point where we can actually win the game, well, you'll just have to find out at the end of this game. Obviously, it's very important that you make sure that you, in these situations, you know what you're doing is actually to try and push as and when you need to. And that's something really, really key that you have to do when you're trying to get these high damage games that you can do in a tank like this. And it's very, very easy for you to actually do it in the Foch 155. Now what you see here is we actually come behind this bush. We see that there's the IS-7, and now it's time to actually, we may take a couple of hits, but it's super important that we actually get this IS-7 right out of the game. And luckily we set him on fire, but unfortunately he did repair the fire, put out the fire just before he actually got, finished off basically. But then we had to use the final shell, which was a little bit disappointing. But we have picked up 5,500 damage, and we've got a decent amount of assistance as well, 1,100 nearly. So yeah, really, really good game so far. 6,500 in total, and these are the sort of things you have to do. Make sure that you redeploy as and when you need to, because this tank is fast enough to do that. And for one of the tier 10 TDs, it certainly is probably my favourite out of them all that I have played. Haven't played the Jaegeru, haven't played the a couple of the others, but from what I have played on PC and of course on the test server, not that that's the best kind of way to actually do it, but this one is certainly on console going to be one of my favourites, and I don't think anything's going to really knock past that to take that kind of spot. I just think the autoloading mechanic of it makes it so much more fun when you know what you're doing, when you can push and be super aggressive against opponents that just don't know what they're doing, and so that's kind of why I like this tank so much. Now you see we're getting a bit unlucky here with the Super Conqueror. We missed all 3 shots on him, which is really, really unfortunate. And it kind of leaves us in this position where, we didn't hit a single shot in that clip. Not particularly great aim, I'll grant that. We did auto-aim, and we did also aim a little bit low on the first shot on the Conqueror, and on the second we did, just the RNG kind of went way too low. And yeah, so that's the one thing that the Foch 155 kind of doesn't do too well, is if you actually miss your shots. And so you have to make sure that you use your aim, fully aim your first shot, because that is the most important one. If you can track an opponent in your first shot, you can retrack them in the second, and then you can continually deal damage to them over and over again for the following 4 shots in your clip. So remember that for when you're coming up against the enemy tanks in the game. Now, we spot the Conqueror here, and you can actually do this with the view range of the Foch 155. It's not a spotter, you're not going to be out there doing light tank work, but what you can do is outspot your opponents as and when you kind of need to in some positions. And so, sometimes you have to do that, and sometimes you have to be aggressive to be able to spot for your team, and hopefully you can get those wins every now and again. Now, in terms of this game, we have spotted the Object 430, which is kind of a crucial one we need to get rid of. We did track him, and our teammate finishes him off. Time to get back down because the Super Conqueror has come out, and it's a 4 versus 3, so we turned it around a lot more than what we did previously. We are on 5 shots out of 6, so we've got plenty of shots to actually deal some damage to the T95 that is sat in front of us and not actually spotting us, which is funny. But yeah, it's really important that you do kind of save your shots as to when you need them most. So don't just fire willy-nilly. If you're only going to get 1 shot off, it's probably not worth firing, and sometimes it's actually better to not fire at all. And so what you see here, I'm actually trying to hit the bottom right-hand side of the T95 hole, which we don't actually manage to do at all within this clip. We're just constantly tracking him, and you can see I am aiming for this point here, which is the weak point, but unfortunately we don't manage to do it. And as we kind of doing that, the Super Conqueror makes a silly play and he comes out, and he gets lucky by escaping again with his ass to us. Now, how have we done in this game? 5,800 damage, 2,159 assistance, that's 7,000, nearly 8,000 kind of damage combined, which is a fantastic game for anyone. That's a really, really good game. Certainly one of the better ones that you can have in the Foch. But you know, it's not necessarily the best game I've ever had. I've certainly had some better ones, and when I go for my third mark in this thing, I should probably have maybe 1 or 2 more games where you're coming up close to 10k damage, because those are the games that you really want to have in terms of trying to progress through your marks of excellence and get the most damage combined, whereby, you know, spotting makes up a decent proportion of the actual mark percentage. So if you can get both spotting and actual damage, it's really crucial in order to get those third marks. You know, going from 0 to 2, you know, you don't necessarily need assistance if you are a good enough player. You know, obviously it helps, but when you're going for your third mark, getting assistance damage is really the key in order to actually go up by any kind of decent amount within the game. Now, get a bit unlucky there. The Conqueror managed to hit us in between the building, which is unfortunate, and he does hit us once more. We bounced the first shot, which is interesting. We put 1 and 2, and then he hits our cupola there, as you saw him aiming up into the right hand side, but I did know that my teammates were advancing with me, and it was very unlikely that the Conqueror was going to get any more damage on us. Unfortunately, we did get taken out that game, but we did manage to pick up 9,000 combined damage, which is absolutely fantastic for the Foch. Really good, certainly good for my marks of excellence, and hopefully it was a good enough one for you to actually have a look at and watch. Obviously, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of the Foch 155, and if you've played it, let me know what you actually think of it yourself, and hopefully we can get a nice discussion going as to what you think of this French tier 10 tank destroyer. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of the day. There are some more videos on screen that you can have a look at right now, but other than that, I hope you have a great day once again, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.